Hello there, guys. Welcome to the Raw Reflections podcast, brought to you by the Mirror Impact. My name is Ariele Keller, and today we are going to be discussing how to go about working towards healing the wounded feminine energy, or the wounded feminine just traits about us. That feminine is going to be the way that we flow, that emotional security, rather than that feeling of being broken down or taken advantage of. Being able to set boundaries and to go about learning that self-awareness portion to know when those boundaries need to be set in place. So we're not going to go into this crazy amount of detail today. I do want to go over more of a specific focus and a couple of action steps to help you process, and keeping it general for the sake of that we all have different upbringings, we all have different experiences, and I want you to be able to take this information and apply it to your life in a way that is going to benefit you and your goals, whether that be physically, emotionally, or mentally. All right? So if you would like to learn more about working with me with fitness or lifestyle, nutrition coaching, whatever that might look like for you, the goals that you're trying to set, you can check out some more information at themirrorimpact.com/memberships, or you can just check out the website to see what we're about, check out who I am as your trainer, and the heart that I have behind the business, and the connections we're making through just this impact, quote unquote impact, that we leave when we all are able to come together and support one another, and that's the whole goal behind the Mirror Impact. So starting off today, I want to challenge you with a reflective thought. Okay, this is Raw Reflections. We're going to start with a raw reflection thought. Okay, so what is the first thing that pops into your head when you think feminine energy or feminine traits? Just think about that for a minute. And before I tell you any ideas, I want you to pinpoint if there was something specific that popped into your head. Maybe it was a stay-at-home mom. Maybe it was motherhood, the womb, sensuality. Maybe it was, did you associate it with something positive, like feelings of power or strength, fluidity, passion, or romance? Or was it something that was more negative, associated by like feelings of shame or fear or disempowerment? Possible weakness or emotional instability, that kind of thing. So what did you feel that you had a more positive perception of when I said feminine or the feminine energy, or do you feel that you had more of a negative perception? What was the first thing that you thought? And I want you to keep that in your mind. And if you are able, if you're not driving or doing something active, while you're listening to this, if you have the opportunity to write some notes down, just keep a notepad in the kitchen while you're listening to this while you cook dinner, or just like you would if you were writing a grocery list. Hey, I need this. Writing little thoughts down just so you can look back on them and be able to determine what your next steps are from point A to point B, right? So just a couple of things we're going to talk about today is by identifying where the weakness and damage is and the why, then we're able to respond accordingly. So this goes along with the mirror coaching model, the acronym MIRROR, which I can put a little clip in here. The acronym MIRROR means starting with mindset, because that's the biggest thing. We have to get our mindset right before we can make any change. And then it's time to identify what is the issue, what is that area of discontentment, and then comes our response. So that's the RRO, the release, repair, and overcome. And I know that some things in life can't be simplified by these three things, and I get that, but this is a way of processing emotions, thoughts, changes in our routine or our body or our mindset, how to break it down in a way that is manageable and it's not going to make us feel overwhelmed. Okay, so what we use with the mirror coaching model is releasing. First off, releasing what we cannot control, what we don't have the ability to do anything about, accepting what we, who we are, and that we are who we are, our truth, understanding that we can release the things, the emotions that don't serve us, the people that are causing havoc in our lives, or possibly just the resentment, releasing the resentment that we hold towards people that keep us from being able to forgive or to move forward. And then the next step would be repairing. So that would be repairing that perception, repairing the identity or the feelings of worthiness, repairing that perception of self and that self-worth, that self-confidence, or repairing relationships that may have been broken from past mistakes made or things said. So there's so much to consider here. And each of these steps is a process. So it's something to be patient with your body. And then the last one is going to be the overcome. And those are the things that we don't have the ability to release or repair, but the things that we have to fight through. And we have to focus on what we are doing to be able to accomplish this, rather than let this mountain, this monster in our way overcome us. How are we able to overcome it? Whether that means community, accountability, strategizing with someone else who's been through it before, surrounding ourselves with community that's going to support us and our truth. And that's the whole concept behind the overcome factor. And that is a big part of community that the Mirror Impact is all about, because we overcome things better together. We're stronger together, regardless of where you are. And especially as women, and this pulls into that feminine energy, because the feminine energy is, we feed off of each other's feminine energy. We also feed off of each other's masculine energy. This is why, you see, guys sometimes act like idiots at gyms, or they're, that kind of thing. Like, they feed off of each other's masculine energy. Sometimes they say things that they don't even mean because they're just feeding off of the guys, that kind of thing. We feed off of women. And that can be in a positive way, in the divine feminine, or it can be in a negative way with the wounded feminine. And the wounded feminine can be triggered by someone else's wounded feminine. So it's very important to watch our energy and the people that we surround ourselves with, and to be very self-aware to the people we're investing time into, and allowing them to invest their time and energy into us. All right, so that's kind of the concept we're going to follow today, that finding where it is, the why, and then our response to the situation. So those 3 steps. Okay, so if you are taking notes, this will be a great time to start. I gave you your reflective thought, and I want you to write down what that first thought of what you interpret feminine energy to be, or the feminine to be. Whatever that was, write it down. It doesn't have to make sense, because no one is going to be critiquing. No one's grading your notes, okay? You're fine. So taking that thought, we're going to dig a little bit deeper. Ready? All right, so I want you to take notes as we're thinking about this stuff. I'm going to give you a couple of thoughts to fuel your thoughts, and then go from there, okay? So first off, how was the feminine honored or dishonored in your upbringing, or the way that you grew up, your family, school, surroundings, society, whatever time of your life you grew up? Maybe it was more women stay silent, or women aren't allowed to speak their minds on certain topics, or I know I grew up in a Baptist church, and it was, believed that women were not to be pastors or leaders in the church, while other friends of mine, they had grandmas that were pastors. So it was that there was a different level of feminine honor, or I guess that perception of the feminine in those 2 areas, based on a religious stance, or what we believed as a denomination. All right, I never necessarily believed it. I was just taught to believe it. And how did your surroundings or your family? I know, this can come up when it comes to race in a lot of families, and the same thing can happen with the idea of male versus female roles, the mother versus the father roles. How were you raised? What environment were you raised in to feel or think a certain way about your feminine, your role, or your your place in the world. When was your family more feminist? Was your family more anti-feminist? Were, depending on Democratic versus Republican, sometimes those, depending on how political your family was, sometimes there would be waivers that in that direction based on what rights women have, or what when it comes to the My Body, My Choice movement, that kind of thing. And so what was that perception there? What in your childhood and your upbringing, when we are most pliable, when we are being brought up in a way that in a lot of cases our parents feel is the best way to teach us, but sometimes that direction can be misguided as well. So then we go into this adult phase of figuring out what that truth is for us, and sometimes that rebel tendency comes out, and because of a negative experience or the restriction that we felt in a certain area of understanding or embracing our feminine, can come out in a rebellious or even an obliger rebellion. If you look back on my 4 tendencies videos, I can put a couple of links here in the description box, but that was a whole series if you want to learn more about that. But when we rebel based on a negative experience, it doesn't always come out into a positive experience or a positive perception of our feminine. So sometimes our wounded feminine can come from us rebelling against something that was restricted. And I'm going to share a little bit more about that in a moment, because that was pretty much what I did, because I'm a rebel. I'm more of an obliger / rebel. Those external expectations, women, how were women expected to do things? What were you expected to do? Were you expected to grow up and become a wife and a mother? Were you expected to do, dating a certain way, or hold yourself to a certain standard when it came to the people that you would hang around? So what did that look like for you? And what did a career look like for you? Because there's a lot of different people. I know I grew up with a lot of girls who grew up in a very traditional homes, and most of them were homeschooled. So their moms were stay-at-home moms who would focus more on raising the children and homeschooling, and the dads would be the breadwinners. And I knew very, very early on in my life that was not the life that I wanted to follow. And I think I was even more repulsed by it because I felt it was an expectation on me. And I would say almost half of my graduating class, and I say that very lightly because I had 30 people in my graduating class, HOTR. But 2015, yes, reppin'. But we had, there were almost half of the girls in my graduating class that was their main focus of, they wanted to be wives and mothers and, to homeschool their children, and that be their main focus, and not really work a job or work a serious job or career outside of that. And that is completely and totally fine. Like, I have so much respect for that. However, that was not the life that I wanted to lead. So, how did your upbringing influence your perception of feminine? That's the second question. And that is, how did these external expectations or outside perspectives that you grew up with, how did that influence your perception of your own feminine energy or your own divine feminine? So think about that. Take a couple of notes. You may even, as I'm talking about this, you may even either connect or relate with some of the things that I'm saying, or it may trigger something in your mind where you're thinking of an instance in your life where you felt your feminine energy was repressed. And those are the things that I want you to write down, because those are areas that often we suppress. We push those down because when something like that indicates weakness, indicates disempowerment, and it highlights that wounded feminine, so we don't want to address it. It's not something that's comfortable to address. And I do want to give you that disclaimer, because even as I am writing my content, like what I want to talk about for this podcast, I am getting emotional just thinking, and more things are being brought up. So if I start tearing up in this podcast, don't blame me, because this is really real for me, guys. And I've dealt with a lot of stuff that I've never thought I would think back on and heal from. And I didn't realize I needed to heal until I went back and looked at it with a new, fresh eye. I looked at it with the intention of, where is it that I could have been repressed? I know I came out okay. I know I turned out fine. But where are there areas I have been repressed, or I have wounds that in my past that I need to go back and heal, so that I can help other women in the future, or I can move forward with more fervor, with more, I want to say fiercity, and that's not a word, I don't think, but I want to be that fierce, feminine influencer. And in order for me to do that, I need to choose to go back and heal certain parts of my own life, my own upbringing, my own perception about my own abilities, my feminine power and energy, the power I have within me to bring those positive qualities, those empowered feminine qualities out in other women. And I'm going to be able to do that because I have chosen to heal myself. I've chosen to set the example and to lead by example. And it's up to everyone else that I may have contact with to choose to do that on their own. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. And I want to challenge you in this, because this podcast, you can listen to it, you can find something that you relate with through it, but ultimately it is up to you to do something about the wounds that you may have in your past, okay? And going back and really thinking about it. That's up to you. So a big example of this, and I told you I was going to talk about this, a big example from where I felt I had some wounded feminine in my life, and where I felt repressed, was in my upbringing when it came to modesty and my body, and loving my body versus hiding my body, as I grew up with the understanding of. And this modesty standard, it was, when I think back as an adult, I understand. Even teaching in a Christian school for a year, I understood the concept behind some standards. I did. However, there were certain instances in my upbringing where I felt that, because of the way that I was scrutinized more, because of the way that I carried myself, because I did love my body, and that wasn't deemed acceptable. It wasn't deemed something that was good in the Christian church or the homeschool community. It was the idea was, your body is for your husband only, and you should present yourself in a way that does not cause men to sin with their eyes. That was the concept behind it. Your clothes, what you wear, could cause a man to sin with his eyes. If your shorts are a half an inch above your fingertips, you could cause a man to sin. If you walk with confidence and your shoulders back, you could cause a man to sin. So it was this concept of, confidence is bad. You should hide your body. You shouldn't wear makeup. It wasn't even like that big of a deal, because I wasn't allowed to wear makeup. And it wasn't like a super crazy church where I was, they had all these restrictive standards. I wasn't allowed to walk in the door unless I met them, kind of thing. But there were certain weeks where I would, wear something a little bit more form-fitting, and I felt confident and I looked good, and it wasn't over the top. It wasn't something that was bad or even sexy. It just looked good on my body, and it complemented my shape or my form. And I would get these judgmental looks from people, and it made me feel like I wanted to crawl back into my skin. And it was this idea of, you are not conforming to what my standard of modesty should be. And I hated that so much. Guys, I can't even tell you how many times, like how many tears I shed over clothing and just wanting to wear something that I felt confident in and having to change it because it didn't meet some sort of standard on modesty. And I'm not even talking like I got really good at modifying my clothes to make them more modest, putting little panels into my shirts to make them go higher, no cleavage, but there were certain things throughout my upbringing that I felt were directed toward me, and it may have just been my own perception of the situation. I may have been projecting a lot of things, but because of these inherent expectations I felt others placed on me, I felt that I was constantly being judged for what I was wearing or what I looked like or the way that I carried myself. I felt that there was something wrong with me, and that led to a lot of this phase of insecurity for me that was very difficult. And I've shared a little bit about this before, but for a lot of my life I struggled with food sensitivities, and I was not able to gain or lose weight. I was gaining weight, and I didn't know why. I had been to allergy testing. They couldn't figure out what was going on, and I was sensitive to gluten and dairy. And my diet mainly consisted of gluten and dairy, and this was before gluten-free was a big thing, and growing, as I got to be like 13, 14, some of my friends' parents were doing gluten-free, and I was like, ooh, that's interesting. But everything tasted like crap at that point in time. So it was really difficult for me to understand what was going on in my body. So I was going through these regular old changes, and then I'm going through these gut issues and all this weight gain. And then my, this is a funny one. I think it's hilarious now because I wear my pants so tight now. I have no shame with it. But my mom's rule with our jeans was that we had to be able to grab a handful of the butt of our jeans while we're wearing them. So as I'm getting older and I'm filling out, my thighs are getting thicker, and I'm muscular, and I've got I'm gaining weight because I'm not able to lose fat. So my jeans are getting tighter. And then, but I'm filling out my jeans better and I feel good. And then it comes to shopping with my mom was a horror, like the worst experience, worse than math for me, honestly. There's a very slight comparison because I hate math. I hated math, but it was a horror for me. And all of these things compiling in addition to my already, society standards and my little stint of not feeling like I was worthy of eating food and sticking my finger down my throat. It wasn't an issue, a really big issue for me, but it was this concept in my mind that I wasn't good enough, that was built by all of these restrictions that were placed on me when it came to being confident in my feminine figure, my feminine body. I always needed to hide my figure. I was a part of a dance team in high school, and that was probably the most difficult experience because it was a double standard. So they'd have rules: no leggings, whenever, no yoga pants. No, it was no leggings, but you could wear yoga pants and a t-shirt. And girls would wear leggings with a t-shirt all the time, the little skinny girls who didn't really have much of a butt. And then I would wear yoga pants that weren't tight, or with a t-shirt, and not even carrying myself in a sexual way, just doing my thing. And I would get pulled to the side and talked to about how my body was too voluptuous to wear something like that, or those words, your body is too voluptuous. I'm using that word for a reason because that was a word that they used. And I've always had such a negative interpretation of that word since that experience. The other, some other ones I was told was, your body isn't built for that outfit, or you're not built to be a ballerina. You're not built to dance professionally, or you're not built to be a model. Those kinds of things. Who are you trying to impress was another one that I would get. And I'm like, I not trying to impress anyone. I feel good in this outfit and I want to wear it. Like, why would you say that to me? And now I understand a little bit more about the concept and the intention behind those statements, that it wasn't always malicious intent. But I am so cautious about how I speak to women and just building women up in learning to love their bodies. Because I noticed a pattern. I noticed that a lot of these women who were more voluptuous, who did have, more curves, they did have, they either went off the deep end and went crazy and just, did whatever, or they became so insecure with their bodies. They never learned to love their body because they were constantly told that they were too curvy, or they had to cover up more, or that it stuck in their minds, and it caused so many emotional and mental blockages for them to even learn how to be sensual with their husbands, or learn how to be sexy in general, learning how to be confident on a date night, or wear something that is a little bit more form-fitting because they feel confident in it. And understanding the damage that is, we're not taught to look back at the damage some of these things could have done to our feminine energy, to our feminine power. And when we get older and we reach this point where we can make our own decisions, we can find our own truth in who we are, in who, we present ourselves as, and what we choose to wear, what we choose to accentuate our bodies with, or what we choose not to wear. We came on this, I'm just saying, started on this earth naked, guys. Just saying, there's beauty in everyone's body. And I understand that there are certain outfits that accentuate certain characteristics more than others. And I think that's important to know. But I never want to be the person to discourage a confident woman who loves her body, regardless of whether she's reached the weight goals that society or family or friends or even herself has set. If she has the ability to love her body, regardless of any of those opinions, that is a divine feminine characteristic. That confidence, that assuredness, that self-awareness and self-empowerment, regardless of the opinions or expectations of anyone else. That is what a true divine feminine energy looks like to the outside. What was the magnetic personality? I love that word. That was one of the examples on the masculine versus feminine chart I shared at the R&R dinners. But it was, I love being able to see that energy in someone, and you can tell when that is oppressed or when that is wounded, when a woman is so concerned with the opinions of other people, or when you're so concerned with, and this is something I still struggle with, guys. I'm not saying I've completely overcome a lot of these insecurities. I have come so far. I have figured out what that oppression was, and I'm gonna break it down into very simplistic words in just a moment. But I'm still in the process of healing from some of these wounds, from some of these resentments towards the people who maybe said some of these things to me. And I've had to forgive myself and a lot of other people who didn't necessarily have malicious intent, but their words may have hurt me. So to break this down and to just summarize a little bit, and we're going to close here very, very soon. I'm trying to keep it short. The established wound that I found in my own life was that my femininity, or my confidence, and my femininity is sensuality and confidence and fluidity and that magnetic personality and just loving who you are. As I was told, what you wear could cause a man to sin with his eyes, and therefore it is my responsibility to be modest, to cover up my body so that I keep a man from sinning with his eyes. I have the same opinion about that as I do with victim blaming when it comes to rape. And asking a girl what she was wearing as the first question comes out of somebody's mouth when she comes forward with some sort of a physical assault situation, it boils my blood. Because we are not responsible for anyone else. I do understand that, looking like a total slut may turn some heads, but girl, if you want to wear that, if you feel confident in that, and I just understand, have some people around you. Don't be walking down the streets of Chicago on your own and go down some dark alleys. I'm just saying, be smart. But when it comes to implying that someone is responsible for someone else's behavior simply because of what they were wearing is inconceivable. I hate that concept. I do believe we are all responsible for our own behaviors, and the clothes on our backs, it should not be the indication of what we're responsible for. You're responsible for the clothes you wear, but not the reactions that other people do and blame them on the clothes you're wearing. I'm sorry. That's preposterous. But that was a concept that I grew up with, was in essence that my femininity leads to sin, which I was taught my entire life that sin leads to death. Sin leads to separation from your creator. So therefore, my femininity leads to death. That is the concept that I grew up with, understanding, and I never knew that's what it broke down to, ever. But ultimately, that was the truth that I had been limiting myself to for so long, and finally realizing that this was simply a concept. This was based out of fear. The choices that I made were based out of fear, not out of freedom, not out of confidence, not out of love. They were based out of fear. And I refused to live my life in fear. And that was the choice that I had to make. I had to release the fear. And that's that first step in response, is releasing. I had to release the fear that I was going to cause someone else to go to hell. I had to release the fear that I was going to be, hurt or attacked if I wore a certain kind of outfit. I had to obviously be careful and cautious, but that is in general. It doesn't matter what I'm wearing. I still need to be cautious because people are really effed up in this day and age. Like, there's some nasty stuff going on, and I can't control that. All I can do is respond to it in a way that is going to benefit my greater good and the greater good of those that I love and those around me. So with that intention, then I feel that freedom to wear what I feel confident in, what I feel beautiful in. And if, I need a second opinion, I'm going to ask someone I trust, is this too much? But I still have to deal with that. That mindset of, is this too much? Releasing the anger and resentment towards, and the shame that I'd been holding towards the facilitators, the teachers, even my mom, who had been the people who were wanting me to be modest, which certain people handled it better than others. And I really didn't have a ton of resentment towards my mom because I knew she was the leader of the homeschool group, so we were held to an even higher standard when it came to modesty because we were the example. And I've always been some semblance of an quote-unquote example, and I've always felt that I've been held to a higher standard. And I feel like that did also contribute to my sense of shame or sense of insecurity when it came to, is this too much? Is this setting a bad example? And constantly fearing that I was doing the wrong thing. And also acknowledging that the intention behind the rules and forgiving that projection of malice or distaste towards me, because it wasn't towards me. It was in general. It was a overall rule for everyone. I just happened to be the one that certain facilitators used as an example for what not to do quite often. And I could either choose to roll up in a ball and feel sorry for myself for that, or I can choose to use that as an opportunity to share how I have grown from that and help other women in the future. So it's our choice what we do with that. I'm choosing to release that rather than hold on to it. So when I see these people now, I'm not going to have negative feelings towards them. I'm not going to have frustration or resentment or anger towards them. I am going to be able to look at them with love because I've released that. So that's that forgiveness element that that takes time, but it is possible. And understanding that prior experience and perceptions played into this decision that each of these facilitators made. So their upbringings, what they believed, religiously or spiritually, whatever that looked like for them, they were pulling that into their rules that they were setting with the intention of protecting people. It wasn't the intention of restricting, it was protecting. And when understanding that perception, it is easier for me to understand and forgive them. So transitioning that mindset to an outward perception. The next one is going to be repairing what needs to be repaired. So that's going to be repairing the perception of my own body, my own sexuality. That was a sensuality that took some time for me, understanding who I was and what that looked for me in the first couple of years of my marriage. It was really difficult for me to come into that place of fully embracing my sexuality and my sensuality, my femininity. And I feel that that has been a struggle for a lot of my other fellow Christian homeschool women. And that's a huge thing that I have a heart for, is helping women understand and establish their truth within their sexuality or their marriage or whatever that looks like for them. I want to help them discover that rather than just falling into what they've been told their whole life, and figuring out what I hold true about my body rather than conforming to what I've been told to believe about my body and how much of it should be covered. And I mean, it is my body, it is my choice, it is I have the choice to create change, good change, and eat healthy and to serve my body. And when I've learned to love my body, I want to serve it with good food and with exercise, and I want to stay active because I feel good and I have more energy. And with that intention, it helps with my health and fitness, and it helps me to be a better example for my clients and the people that I work with. And then the last step here is I had to overcome the twinges of self-doubt that I'm still overcoming this, guys. It's not something I've just overcome once. The overcome step is a constant process. We get stronger every day, just like you would if you're doing a workout and you do it again and again, and you get stronger each time. I had to overcome those twinges of self-doubt, of insecurity, of some woman's voice in my head about whether my outfit is too much, or those negative statements of your body is too voluptuous, your body isn't built for this outfit, you don't look good in this, that kind of thing. And even on my days when I call them my fat days, we all have fat days, right? Probably not the most positive way of identifying it, but those days when we're just not feeling our hottest self, and even falling into the trap of negative words towards myself in the mirror, or even not even saying them out loud, but just in my mind tearing myself down about how my body, and fallen right back into that downward spiral that I went in when I was 14, and I was hating my body, and I didn't know what was going on, and I couldn't figure out why I couldn't stay awake, because my body wasn't meant to be on carbs that much, and it was having so much stress in my gut that I wasn't able to focus on anything else. I was sleeping, or my body was healing. It was trying to heal. That's a whole other concept. I have another video on that too, but learning to love who I am, what I look like, even when I don't meet other people's standards of beauty, society's standards of beauty, or when I don't meet my own standards of beauty. And I think that is the hardest. And that is one of the biggest things when it comes to learning and healing that feminine, that wounded feminine, is learning to love your body regardless of whether you have accomplished the milestone you're setting out for or not. It is not based on the product, or it's not based on the product or the progress that you've been making, but it's based on how you are learning about yourself, who you are becoming as a person. And when you're able to focus on the service element and reflecting those things, those mental and emotional truths that you're learning about yourself, you can reflect those out to the world, and people see that even before they see the weight loss sometimes, because of the energy that you bring into the room. The person that you are outweighs the scale. It outweighs the size of jeans that you're wearing. If you're loving your body and you are living in that love, you can reflect that to other people as well, and they feel it. It is a ripple effect, and this is the mirror impact. All right, so I just want to, and in all of this process, the result of this is ultimately freedom. It's a work in progress, but a willingness and a commitment to continued growth is on the track to that sense of freedom. All right, so just in summary, how do we release or heal our wounded feminine? That's first by identifying where that weakness is, where that damage is, and why it got there. Tracking back to those upbringing, those things that people said, all of that, and responding accordingly. That release, repair, and overcome. So I challenge you in this week. I want you to dig deep, to think about where in your life you feel you've had some semblance of wounded feminine, and just take a little bit of time to work towards healing that. Identify the where, what, why, and then responding to that in a way that's going to benefit your personal growth and the people in your life as well. All right, so I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your week, that you have gained something from this today, and thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of your path today. I will definitely plug in the Instagram and the Facebook. Subscribe to this channel if you want to hear more videos on this. This is not the last video on feminine. I guarantee I want to do another one on this. And the website, remember, themirrorimpact.com/memberships if you're interested in working with me. Remember to be the impact in the world around you this week, and I will see you next time. Be blessed.